Silence before the storm. The Vexari warships appeared without warning on a cloudless Tuesday morning. One moment, humanity was going about its daily routine, commuting to work, attending school, planning for the weekend. And the next, massive obsidian vessels blotted out the sun over every major city on Earth. There was no declaration, no ultimatum, no chance to surrender. Just the deafening silence before devastation rained from the sky. Ilara Chen had been testing a new propulsion system in a remote research facility in the Nevada desert when the attack began. The experimental bunker, designed to withstand catastrophic engine failures, inadvertently became her salvation. The first she knew of the invasion was when emergency alerts flooded her communication system, followed by static, and then nothing. When she finally emerged 3 days later, the world had changed forever. Las Vegas, once a glittering jewel in the desert, was now a smoldering crater. Phoenix, San Diego, Los Angeles, all gone. Satellite imagery, when she could capture it, showed the same story worldwide. London, Tokyo, Beijing, Cairo, reduced to ash and ruin in a coordinated assault that had lasted less than 12 hours. Humanity hadn't just been defeated, it had been nearly erased. The Vexari, as they called themselves in their first and only broadcast to the remnants of humanity, considered the conquest complete. Their message was simple: Earth had been cleansed of its primary infestation. Remaining humans were considered vermin, not worth the resources required for systematic extermination. They would be hunted for sport or ignored as irrelevant. "We have claimed this world," announced Supreme Commander Crixus, his translucent skin rippling with bioluminescent patterns that signaled pride in their language. "Your resistance was negligible. Your species is concluded." From their massive command ships hovering above the ruins of what had once been centers of human civilization, the Vexari celebrated. They transmitted their victory throughout their empire, showcasing Earth's devastation as proof of their superiority. They drank from ceremonial chalices while viewing the destruction, toasting their efficiency and precision. But they had made a critical error, one that would prove fatal to their occupation. They didn't finish the job. Ilara wasn't alone in survival. Across the planet, pockets of humanity endured, in military bunkers, remote villages, underground facilities, and improvised shelters. Soldiers, scientists, farmers, mechanics, teachers, doctors, ordinary people suddenly facing extraordinary circumstances. 2 months after the attack, Ilara had established a small community in what remained of the research facility. 23 survivors had found their way there, drawn by the still-functioning power systems that Ilara had managed to keep online, using the experimental fusion reactor she'd been testing when the world ended. Among them was Marcus Wade, a former Marine who'd been on leave visiting his brother in a small town just outside the blast radius of Las Vegas. His military training proved invaluable as they fortified the compound and established security protocols. "They think they've won," he told Ilara one night as they scanned frequencies for any human transmissions. "And that's our advantage. They're not looking for us anymore." Dr. Sanjay Patel, an immunologist who'd been hiking in Death Valley when the attacks came, agreed. "Overconfidence is a weakness we can exploit. History has shown that premature victory celebrations often precede dramatic reversals." But it was Zombiki, a satellite communications specialist who'd been driving cross-country when the invasion hit, who brought them their first real hope. Using salvaged equipment and her expertise, she managed to establish brief contact with similar survivor groups across North America. "We're not alone," she announced to the gathered community. "There are others out there, organized, resourceful, and very, very angry." Over the next 3 months, their network grew. They established contact with a military bunker in Colorado, a repurposed mine in West Virginia, a retrofitted offshore oil rig in the Gulf of Mexico, and dozens of smaller groups scattered across the continent. Similar networks were forming in Europe, Asia, and South America. The Vexari remained oblivious, focused on their primary mission: resource extraction, Earth's water, minerals, and biological diversity were being systematically harvested and shipped to their homeworld. Humans were so irrelevant to their plans that they deployed minimal security around their operations. 6 months after the initial attack, Ilara made a discovery that changed everything. Deep in the secured archives of the research facility, she found classified files about Project Prometheus, a theoretical defense system designed to counteract advanced alien technology. It had been abandoned as too costly and speculative years before the invasion, but the conceptual framework remained intact. It was designed to create targeted electromagnetic pulses that could disable specific frequencies of technology. Ilara explained to the Council of Survivors they'd established. The theory was solid, but the power requirements were beyond our capabilities at the time. Marcus leaned forward, eyes intent. And now, Ilara smiled for the first time in months. The experimental fusion reactor I was testing when they came. It was designed to produce exactly that level of output. Hope, that precious and fragile emotion, began to spread through their community. They weren't just surviving anymore. They were planning. Through their growing network, they gathered intelligence about Vexari operations and technology. They learned that the aliens had a hierarchical command structure, with significant decisions flowing from the massive command ship that now orbited over what had once been Washington, D.C. They discovered that Vexari ground forces were primarily automated drones controlled by centralized systems, with only high-value installations receiving living Vexari overseers. Most crucially, they identified a pattern in Vexari communications, a specific frequency range they used for secure transmissions that could be vulnerable to the Prometheus countermeasures. "We can't take them head-on," Marcus cautioned during planning sessions. "But we don't need to. Guerrilla warfare has always been the answer to overwhelming force. Hit and run. Disrupt. Disappear." Ilara and her team worked tirelessly to adapt the Prometheus specifications to deployable weapons. They created portable EMP devices that could temporarily disable Vexari drones. They developed jammers that could block communications between alien forces. They even managed to hack into abandoned human satellites, repurposing them to monitor Vexari movements. The first strike was small but significant. A Vexari mining operation in what had once been the Grand Canyon was targeted. A team led by Marcus deployed Prometheus devices that disabled the automated extractors and security drones, then vanished before reinforcements arrived. They left behind only a message, broadcast on Vexari frequencies: "Humanity remembers." The confusion among the Vexari was palpable. Their systems had registered an equipment failure, but the message suggested deliberate sabotage, impossible from a defeated species. Commander Crixus dismissed it as an anomaly, a glitch in their systems combined with leftover automated human defenses. He wouldn't make that mistake again. Over the next weeks, similar strikes occurred across the globe. A water processing plant in Australia went offline. A biological sampling station in the Amazon was found abandoned, its specimens released back into the jungle. A mineral transport in Russia never reached its destination. Each time, the same message was left behind: "Humanity remembers." The Vexari began to increase security around their operations, pulling resources from their extraction efforts to defend against what they still refused to acknowledge was an organized human resistance. Commander Crixus, pressured by his superiors for the delays in resource shipments, finally ordered a comprehensive scan for human activity. They were looking for us now, but it was already too late. We had become the ghosts in their machines, the whispers in their communications, the shadows at the edge of their sensors. We had survived their apocalypse. We had endured their victory celebrations. And now, 9 months after they thought they'd ended us, we were ready to show them exactly what humanity does when backed into a corner. The resistance had weapons. It had strategies. It had networks spanning continents. But most importantly, it had something the Vexari couldn't comprehend: the unbreakable human spirit, forged in the fire of near extinction and tempered by the determination to reclaim our world. As Ilara looked at the assembled strike teams preparing for the first coordinated global attack against Vexari infrastructure, she felt a fierce pride surge through her veins. They were mechanics, teachers, soldiers, scientists, ordinary people united by extraordinary purpose. They celebrated too soon, she told the gathered fighters, her voice steady and determined. Tonight, we remind them that humanity isn't just a species, it's a force of nature. And we're about to become the storm they never saw coming. Defiance rising. Commander Crixus stood before the holographic display, his translucent skin darkening with displeasure as he reviewed the damage reports. Over the past 3 weeks, 17 critical extraction operations had been compromised. Equipment failures, communication disruptions, transport vessels vanishing. The pattern was undeniable, though he still refused to name it. Increased drone patrols by 30%. He ordered his subordinates. Deploy sentinels at all primary facilities. I want atmospheric sensors calibrated to detect human biological signatures. Sub-Commander Velen, his second-in-command, hesitated before speaking. Supreme Commander, these incidents bear the hallmarks of coordinated attacks. Perhaps we underestimated the survivors. Crixus's skin flashed crimson with anger. Impossible. Their military capabilities were neutralized in the initial cleansing. Their leadership eliminated. Their communication infrastructure destroyed. He dismissed the concern with a gesture. These are isolated incidents. Probably automated defense systems we failed to deactivate. But as he returned to his private chambers aboard the command vessel, doubt crept into his mind. The latest incident had occurred at a primary water processing facility in what humans had called the Great Lakes region. Not only had the facility been disabled, but the attackers had reprogrammed the automated defense turrets to fire on Vexari reinforcements before disappearing. That wasn't the behavior of automated systems, that was strategy, intelligence, adaptation. For the first time since the invasion began, Crixus felt something unfamiliar. Unease, half a continent away, in the retrofitted research facility that had become the central coordination point for the North American resistance, Ilara Chen and her team celebrated their most successful operation to date. The Great Lakes Strike Team reports complete success, Marcus announced to the crowded command center. Facility disabled, 23 Vexari drones reprogrammed, and they recovered 3 intact communication modules. A cheer went up from the assembled strategists and technicians. Each victory, however small, fed the growing momentum of the resistance. Each successful operation provided more intelligence, more salvage technology, more confidence. The European network reports similar success at their target in the Alps, added Zoe, who had become their communications director. And our Australian allies have established contact with a survivor group in Southeast Asia. The network is growing. Ilara studied the global map they'd constructed, tracking Vexari operations and resistance victories. We're still just biting at their ankles, she cautioned. To really hurt them, we need to aim higher. Dr. Patel, who had been analyzing the salvaged communication modules, looked up from his workstation. I think I might have something that helps with that. He projected his findings onto the main screen. These modules contained the encryption protocols for their command channel, the direct line to their leadership vessels. The implications were immediately clear to everyone in the room. If they could access the command channel, they could potentially disrupt the entire Vexari operation on Earth, or better yet, feed them false information. Can we crack it? Ilara asked, hope threading through her voice. Already have, Paddle replied with a tired smile. Their technology is advanced, but their cryptography is surprisingly straightforward. They never expected to need complex security measures against us primitives. Marcus's expression hardened with determination. Then it's time to show them exactly how primitive we aren't. The next phase of resistance operations shifted from simple disruption to sophisticated deception. Using the cracked encryption protocols, they began feeding false data into Vexari systems. Phantom human signatures appeared on their sensors, drawing response teams into empty areas, while actual strike teams hit valuable targets elsewhere. Resource transports were redirected to incorrect coordinates, wasting precious fuel and time. Emergency alerts pulled security forces from one facility to defend against non-existent threats at another. The Vexari, for the first time in their military history, were being outmaneuvered by a supposedly inferior species. Commander Crixus could no longer deny the reality. The Supreme Council had noticed the delays in resource shipments, the loss of equipment, the growing inefficiencies in Earth operations. His latest report had been met with unprecedented disapproval. This was supposed to be a simple cleansing operation, the Council Elder had reminded him, her skin patterns conveying severe disappointment. Instead, 9 standard cycles have passed, and resource extraction is at 30% of projected capacity. Explain yourself, Commander. Crixus had finally been forced to admit the truth. We face organized human resistance, Elder. Not at a military level, but persistent guerrilla actions that target our operations. The Elder's skin had flushed with disbelief. You assured us they were broken, defeated, incapable of meaningful resistance. I was incorrect in that assessment, Crixus acknowledged, the admission burning like acid in his throat. Rectify your error, Commander, immediately, or your replacement will. Now, pacing his command chamber, Crixus made the decision that would ultimately seal the Vexari's fate. Prepare the purifier, he ordered Velen. We will implement Protocol Omega. Velen's skin paled to near transparency, the Vexari equivalent of shock. Supreme Commander, Protocol Omega will render large regions of the planet uninhabitable. The Council authorized resource extraction, not planetary devastation. The Council authorized success, Crixus snapped. By any means necessary. These humans have proven more resilient than anticipated. We will escalate accordingly. The purifier was the Vexari's most destructive weapon, a device that generated a cascading reaction in a planet's atmosphere, creating a firestorm that could scour entire continents of life. It had been used only twice in Vexari history, both times against uninhabited worlds that had proven too hostile for conventional colonization. Using it on Earth would ensure the elimination of human resistance, along with most other life forms, and the very resources they had come to harvest. Crixus no longer cared. His reputation, his career, his standing in Vexari society were at stake. He would rather return with nothing than face the humiliation of defeat by primitives. What he didn't realize was that his internal communications had been compromised weeks earlier by Zoe's team. The Resistance knew about the purifier before his own crew had begun preparations. We have 48 hours before they deploy it, Ilara told the Emergency Council meeting. Once activated, there's no stopping the atmospheric reaction. Then we have one option, Marcus stated flatly. We take out their command ship before they can deploy it. The room fell silent. The Vexari command vessel was the most heavily defended target on, or above Earth. It housed their leadership, their primary communication systems, and their most advanced weapons. It was a fortress in the sky, protected by energy shields and automated defense systems that would annihilate any approaching threat. Impossible, several voices murmured. Ilara stood, her expression resolute. 9 months ago, our extinction was impossible to prevent. Yet here we stand. She looked at each face in turn. The Prometheus project wasn't just about creating EMPs. It was about developing a comprehensive defense against alien technology, including their propulsion systems. She pulled up the classified files she'd been studying for months. If we can get a modified Prometheus device close enough to their command ship, we can disable their gravitational engines. The ship won't just be crippled. Earth's gravity will pull it down. Getting anything close to that ship is suicide, Dr. Patel warned. Not necessarily, interrupted a new voice. Cassandra Rivera, a former commercial pilot who joined their group 3 months earlier, stepped forward. The Vexari use automated defense systems calibrated to detect approaching threats, but they define threats as powered vessels or weapons with active signatures. She smiled grimly. They'd never expect a dead-drop approach. The plan that emerged was audacious to the point of insanity, but it was their only hope. Using salvaged Vexari parts and the experimental aerospace technology from Ilara's original research, they constructed a stealth glider, a vehicle with no power signature, no active systems until the critical moment. A volunteer would pilot it from high altitude, released from one of the few remaining human aircraft. As alarms blared across Vexari installations, a retrofitted weather plane reached its maximum altitude above the Nevada desert. Inside its cargo bay, Ilara Chen sat in the cockpit of the stealth glider, running final checks on the Prometheus device integrated into its frame. "Humanity remembers," she whispered as the bay doors opened beneath her, revealing the curve of Earth far below and the obsidian mass of the Vexari command ship silhouetted against the stars. Then she was falling, the glider embracing the silence of unpowered flight, invisible against the night sky. The approach took nearly 40 minutes. 40 minutes of precise adjustments using only manual controls. 40 minutes of holding her breath every time the massive ship scanning. They had celebrated too soon, toasting their victory while the real battle was just beginning. They had underestimated humanity's resilience, our ingenuity, our refusal to accept defeat even when all seemed lost. And in doing so, they had ensured their own downfall. Humanity remembered. And now, so would every other species that might consider Earth an easy target. We were no longer just inhabitants of a small blue planet in an unremarkable solar system. We had become something the galaxy would learn to respect, perhaps even fear. We had become survivors, defenders, victors. We had become humanity, unleashed.